I make a list of rules for a living. I've had strange jobs and have stories to tell. The following is a description of the interview that occurred on January 22 of 2023. The two parties involved in this conversation were Malika Phillips and Freelance blogger working on an article for the website Stranger Dangers, and the subject of the interview was individual identified as Nelson Powell. This website captured a Blizzard and Michelle story and apparently made Maka agree to meet with Mr. Powell in a back booth at the Sleeping Robin dinner. That was already some idea that he might have such stories to tell. Malika, hey, you must be Nelson. Nelson, short laugh. Well, if you say I am, then I must be. Micah, laughing in return. I hope you haven't been waiting. Nelson, if you don't mind, sit over here at the end of the table instead of across in the other booth. Micah, okay. Nelson, sorry, I know this might seem strange, but I don't like people directly across from me when I'm in a booth like this, and I also don't want someone overhearing what we're talking about. Micah, sure, yeah, I get it. The sound of a metal chair being pulled up to the table. So, how do you want to start? You've been saying you're on the format that you had a strange job with a list of rules. Nelson, what? No. No. I said my job is making list of rules, and some of my work orders have been pretty weird. So you know, have stories to tell? Micah? Huh? Okay, well, tell me about the job first, I guess. What kind of rules or, list of rules do you make? Nelson. Oh, all kinds of, really. Micah. Yeah, um, but I mean, like, what kind of rules? Business or schools or what? Nelson. Usually nothing quite that banal. For instance, last week I created a set of rules for how to survive a night in a house haunted by an evil dead child. Micah, laughter. What? You're shitting me. I mean, you're kidding. Nelson, no. I'm not shitting you or kidding. Micah, so you wrote some tips for someone to survive a night in a house that's haunted by an evil dead kid? For what kind of internet or something? And isn't that a bit Nelson, no, tips. Rules. Micah, oh, oh, shoot. Yeah, my bad. I wasn't trying to make fun. I think I just don't understand yet. So you make rules on how someone could survive a night in a house if the house was haunted by an evil dead child's ghost? Nelson, not a house. The house. It's in Utah, apparently. Micah, and so this house in Utah, it has an evil child ghost? Nelson, so they say. Micah, you make rules so people can spend the night there and survive the ghost. Nelson, I make rules that, if followed closely enough, they would survive that ghost. Micah, isn't that what... Oh, thanks. No, water is fine for me. Are you eating? Nelson, I am if you are. Micah, sure. I'll have a cheeseburger with ketchup. Nelson, The same, but with pickles as well. Micah. So, I think I still not following entirely. Maybe we should back up and start from the beginning. How do you get into this line of work? How does any job start? You find it, or it finds you. In this case, it was more the latter. I had recently survived a tragedy that took my girlfriend and best friend. I was as shifted in my own pain and sadness. When my employer approached me, I think I already knew it wasn't an accident, but the state I was in, it didn't matter. I was a drowning man, and every lifeline, even one thrown by a strange hand, was welcomed. I understood the work a bit from the start, and I took it right away. I was never very good at math, but the mechanical precision of the words as well. I was taught that crafting a good set of rules was a lot like building a clock. Now, I'd never known I was good with words or clocks, but it turns out I am. Understanding the parts and how they fit each other for their entire purpose. My first set of rules were fairly maintained. A man had come to my employer based on rumors. And while typically customers without references are turned away, this one was accepted and handed over to me. The man was a nasty sort. He had kind of atonements for those he saw as his lesser. Those of my time with him, he was a minor intelligence outside of a certain creative peak when it came to ways to torture his victims. He was a series of rules that were based upon ancient Egypt moralities. His notes and subjects were a complete mess with questionable resources and no descriptable pattern or theorem through them. Those are big no's in our line of work. I tried to explain that to him, but he wanted to argue. When I finally pared him down to just 12 rules, which was still way too many, by the way, then we reached the next problem. He wanted the hatch to be sealed. Sorry, you don't know what that means. In any set of rules we make, there has to be a legitimate way to succeed. It can't be hard or tricky or whatever. But if you reach the escape hatch door, it has to be there and it can't be locked. He didn't care about that. He was a dick and didn't care about the process. I went to my employer and asked what I should do. If this was a quote-unquote the customer's always right thing, or what? You know what I was told. Fuck the customer. Only the rules matter. So he got his rules according to his specifics, but done in a way where the rules were illegitimate that had some power, though we were hammered by his insistence on a confusing and confusing mess of obstacle references and poorly thought out concepts. But it had a complete structure that wasn't escapable except that the hatch at the end, which is illegitimate, we can promise. You can imagine what happened next. He tried to alter the rules and cut out any way to succeed. 2 weeks later, his first victim was being interviewed on the news. He was found crushed to death in the bottom of the abandoned factory elevator. Some might think that taking on his job was a mistake, but I saw it for what it was. It was a way of teaching me several lessons at once. Also seeing how I handled the work when it wasn't easy. Did I have the energy to stand up for the equality and sanctity of what we were doing? If you asked me that 2 months later, I have probably said no.